Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
Okay, so I will probably make a playlist of this as I have several experiences from the time that I was like a younger child to kind of current times, and I've never shared them before on social media. I haven't really like super talked about them to very many people. This isn't typically the normal content that I make for this page. I like to share my like graphics and designs that I make, but I thought since it is almost Halloween, this would be a great time to share some ghost stories that I have. I want to start off with one of the youngest memories that I have of something weird happening. I was living at my great-grandparents' house at the time, or I should say my great-grandma's house. My great-grandpa had passed away before I met him, but we lived on 180 acres north of Seattle, and this was land that my grandparents had homesteaded on, and we almost had like this little family kind of compound. So my great-grandparents had built a house on like 20 acres on one side. We were building in the middle on like 5 acres, and then my grandparents were on the other side of us. So it was a great place to grow up. I had my family very close, lots of acreage and woods to explore. But anyway, so there was a time we were staying at my great-grandma's house, and I was younger. I was taking a bath, and my mom was in the room, and the window was kind of like frosted glass, and we saw this shadow go by, and the shadow was wearing like a kind of like a fedora hat. You could see horn rimmed glasses, and then you could hear like these high-heeled, like not high heels, like what, like you know how men used to wear like leather shoes in the back with like a heel, like nice shoes, in like the 50s. This house was built in the 70s. It was brand new. My great-grandparents built it. And so anyways, we hear this walking by the window, and my mom and I are home alone, and you know, you live in the country, the doors are unlocked, and this house was in the middle of like a field, like almost 20 acres of field. I mean, there were some woods and a barn a little further off, but quite a ways off. And then there was a cement sidewalk that went around the house. And so my mom's like, oh my gosh, someone's on the property. And to get onto this property, I mean, it was surrounded by other woods, and you had to come down a very long driveway to get there. So you would know. So it was very odd that someone was on this property. And so she goes to like the front door to like see who's here. And she looks outside, and I mean, it's on the same side as the bathroom, and there's like nobody there. There's no one at all, no one running. Like you would see if someone was like running from the house to the field. She didn't hear anything else. Our dogs weren't barking. There wasn't anything weird at all. It was like this person had just disappeared. So that was a very odd thing. And in the office of this house, my great-grandma had a photo of her husband, my great-grandpa, and he wears a hat and horn-rimmed glasses, and then he had like a business suit on. So we definitely think that that could have been him. After my great-grandma passed away, I have more stories about after she passed on some weird things that happened. But neighbors had moved into this house, had bought this house and moved into it, and I was babysitting these young kids because by that time I was maybe like, I don't know, 13, 14 when she passed. So I was babysitting, and like the dad would come home and he'd ask questions that were just a little odd. He'd be like, have you ever seen anything in the house? Or do you ever catch something out of the corner of the eye when you're here? Or did your parents ever say anything weird happening, you know, like when you guys were here, when your great-grandma was here? So they would definitely see just like things out of the corner of their eye moving. And this house, even though it was built brand new, it still had kind of like this like darkness, or almost like I don't want to say dampness because it wasn't wet, but it just felt a little dark in a corner of the house, and that's where they would see things. And then it also had these huge like sliding glass doors that faced out to the pasture, and it's gorgeous during the day, but there's just something about it that's absolutely terrifying at night. Like you keep on thinking that you're like seeing shadows or stuff out there. So that was a crazy thing. I will make a part 2 for some other like random weird things that happened after my great-grandma passed that definitely could have been her.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
Okay, so joke's on me for my last video because I said I would make a playlist, and I don't use TikTok much, so apparently you have to have 10,000 followers to make a playlist, so there will be no ghost story playlist. But anyways, this is part 2, and if you didn't catch part 1, go ahead, because I'm chronologically outlining my experiences since I was a child. So these are kind of some weird things now that my great-grandma has passed on, that just kind of happened, that we're just kind of like, I wonder what that was. So for context, my great-grandma had grown up in eastern Montana. She was probably one of the first Danish settlements, and like settled like 400 acres or something like that. That's where she grew up with her brothers and sisters. So she would, like teach me a lot of like homesteading type of like cooking and baking and things like that. So she had passed away. I mean, I was maybe 12, 13, 14 years old. And we were leaving our house to go to my grandparents' house for Thanksgiving. And I was the last one out of the house. We had like kind of cleaned up after making Thanksgiving, like our part of the dinner. And I was the last one out. I remember locking the front door. We only actually had one door. So I locked the front door, and I like twisted it, double checked that it was locked, and then we went to Thanksgiving dinner. When we came back, I was the first one in the door, and on the counter on a washcloth, or as my grandparents say, washcloth, there were 2 eggs, 2 raw eggs, and they were sitting on like a washcloth. Sorry, blank there. Anyway, so they're sitting on a washcloth. So that is something that my great-grandma used to do before she started baking. She would lay out a washcloth and let her eggs warm up to like room temperature. And she put them on the washcloth so that they wouldn't roll away. So it wasn't something that we practiced. It wasn't something that we did. It was really only me and my mom baking. And so I knew that those eggs were not out on the counter when we left. And so that was one experience where everyone's like, who left the eggs out? Who did this? Like, it's just like, great-grandma used to do. So that was interesting. Another time, let's see here, I had moved out at this point, and I had inherited, or I shouldn't say inherited, I'd been given some furniture as a kid from my great-grandma. It was like some antique, like waterfall style dresser, went like this. It had a bed, a dresser, and a nightstand. So I'd use that all through my childhood. When I moved out, I didn't take that furniture with me. And my brother then had that room with that furniture. So, I mean, I used this nightstand growing up my entire life. And we were trying to, I can't remember what we need to get out of there, but we were trying to open the nightstand. And it was like jam. Like it would open like a little bit, and it would just get stuck and jam and jam. And finally, I stuck my hand kind of up behind it, underneath it, and I was wiggling stuff around, and then the drawer popped open, and out from the drawer was a gold ring. I mean, it was little, but kind of looked like costume jewelry, but it was real. It had a real peridot gemstone in the middle, and then some diamonds around it. And no one had ever seen this ring before. Or I should say, no one that we knew of, because none of us as siblings recognized it. So then, peridot is also my birthstone for August. And I mean, sorry, I had to deal with that fly. Okay, so this ring, we just didn't know where it came from. It's just really weird that it had been stuck in there for 15 years and no one knew about it. No one knew where it came from. So we go out and we show my dad, and he's like, where did you get that? He's like, that is your great-grandma's ring that we have been looking for. It wasn't in her jewelry box when, her stuff was divided up when she passed away. People were looking for this peridot with diamond ring. And the crazy thing is, though, is peridot is my birthstone. No, none of my other family is born in August. In all of my family, aunts, uncles, cousins, no one else in August. And my great-grandma was born in May, so I don't know where this ring came from or why she would have a peridot ring. Maybe she just liked light green. But it's just really weird that that would like jump out after 15 years of having this, nightstand and dresser set. Another little thing before, I don't want to make this too long, because I have many other stories to tell about like a bar that I used to work at. That was pretty crazy. It's the first time I ever saw a full body, not a full body, but like an actual like apparition of something, besides the shadow in my previous story. But anyways, so my grandma, she was very loving, my great grandma, and really loved her a lot. And she would do this thing. I'm sorry, I'm holding my phone, but she would like rub your elbow with her hand. I can't do it. And she would just, just kind of like, when she's standing next to you, just kind of like play with your arm, rub your arm, that kind of thing. There was a time when my dad was really sick and none of us lived at home anymore. He was by himself and he had like an ulcer in his stomach that was making him bleed. So he was literally in the bathroom like bleeding out. Nobody knew. He wasn't by his phone. I mean, he was like dying. And he said like during that time, he could smell my great grandma's perfume and he could feel someone like rubbing like his arm, and like it was like a very comforting, like you're gonna be okay type of a thing. It was very, very interesting. He swears it was like a completely just like real experience. Like that's what got him through and helped him like hold on, because for some reason my grandpa decided to come down and visit. And my dad wasn't answering the door, but our dog at the time, she's a Rottweiler named Lucy, she was just going nuts at the door, which she wouldn't usually do that because she recognizes my grandpa and we see him often enough. I mean, he just knew something was wrong. So he had let himself in and found my dad. And my dad's alive and he's well. He's still kind of, he's pretty ill, just in general. He has MS and a few other things, but yeah, so that feeling of my great grandma like rubbing his arm is like what got him through that moment and kind of like kept him awake and conscious. So part 3 is coming. Won't be in a playlist because I don't have 10,000 followers. Sorry.
I don't know why her voice cut off, but you get the point. Let me tell you the story of how I encountered a shadow girl. Okay, a shadow person that took on the form of a little girl. Let me set the scene. We are in roughly 2010, 2011, 2012, around that range. I don't remember the exact year, but on this particular house was one of my childhood homes that me and my family moved to. Just like a lot of you, we moved a lot growing up. And on this particular house, we referred the house as Michelle Circle, and from that point on, it just stuck. Let me explain why we did that. This is a little representation, but the road that led to the cul-de-sac was called Michelle Circle, and the house of Michelle Circle was located right before the cul-de-sac opened. And it's because of that why we called this house Michelle Circle. On this particular day, I was just home alone with my dad. This was when my parents weren't divorced yet. I don't remember where my mom and my sisters went, but they went shopping, I believe. That's more than likely what happened. But anyways, I didn't want to go, so they went shopping and went to go out, do their own thing, have a girl day, okay? So, as a middle schooler who was bored out of his mind, I first went outside to go knock on my neighbor's doors because I was under the assumption that they would be home too, right? Because it's summer break, so the kids should be around, and at this time we would always hang out with each other. The neighborhood kids would always hang out with each other, but unbeknownst to me, they weren't home until I finished knocking, and yeah, nobody answered, nobody was home. So I went back home and I went to go try to talk to my dad, but he was already asleep on the couch in the living room, and I was like, well, damn. What am I going to do now? Because I was going to go and play on the laptop, but I didn't want to. So what does a middle schooler do when he's bored out of his mind? I'll tell you exactly what he does. He does nothing. Literally nothing. So I need to provide you more context on the situation because it's important. It's important. Turn your screen now if you haven't. So this is the layout, which is important, right? So this is the front door that goes into the house, and once you go into the front door, you're met with the sitting room. Across from the front door is another door that leads to the kitchen, that then leads to another door that opens up to the living room. But that doesn't matter because my dad was like right here. Anyways, so I decide to walk through the kitchen, go through the door, and sit on this couch. All right, and in front of the couch is the window, and to the side of the couch was the stairs that goes upstairs to the bedroom. Oh my gosh. Now just thinking about it just gives me chills. But anyways, so boom, we're sitting on the couch and I'm looking outside in the front yard, bored out of my mind, hot as hell, means it's summer, and I get this feeling that I'm being watched. To preface, I pretty much grew up around the supernatural, hearing knocks in the middle of the night, having things misplaced, weird things just happening. I learned how to grow up with it, just like a lot of others who grew up around the supernatural, and my mom always just told me to ignore it. But I didn't ignore it this time. I didn't ignore it because I was bored out of my mind. So I decide to just sit with the feeling of being watched and to try and trick the ghost. Because originally, whenever I would get these feelings, I would never see anything, right? Never, but not this day. So I thought in my mind that I could trick the ghost to believing that I was not aware that they were watching me. Or the shadow person was watching me. Shadow girl, little girl. It was a little girl was watching me. The average person, normal person would have just dipped immediately, but not me. Anyways, so I'm sitting there. I calm my body down because I'm like, I'm going to catch this bitch. You know, I didn't say that, but like, I'm going to catch this person who's watching me. And so immediately, when I get the feeling that they are still watching me and they don't think that I know that they're watching, I decide to look to the left, and this is what I saw. I looked to the left like fast, like this. I just rewatched that, and I'm never doing that again. But yeah, that's what I saw. And just imagine that, but a black, shadowy figure that took on the form or appearance of a little girl with like 2 pigtails. That's what I saw. And you know what? Based off where she ducked from, she was in my sister's bedroom, which is thank God. Thank God. But yeah. And you know, at first it happened so quick to the point that I didn't even register that it happened. So I did it again. And I saw her duck one more time. I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to play that out again because no. But yeah. And that's my story of me seeing a shadow girl. Yeah, I only told a couple of my family members this story, but yeah, it's still brings me chills. It's gonna be a memory that will forever be ingrained in my mind, and yeah, that's about it. I saw her twice, and you know what's even funnier? I didn't even freak out. Like, I didn't even freak out when this shit happened. I didn't. And I just went about my day like it was an ordinary day. Oh my God. I don't even know. But if you watched this video, I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah. I think I may have a couple more, but I don't know. But anyways, yeah, that's my paranormal story.
Tell your ghost story that seems fake but is completely true trend. However, won't let me stitch it for whatever reason, so I'm just going to tag the person. Also, this was also uploaded on Morgan Lambert's page because I had emailed this story. But a lot of people apparently want to hear it, so I'll be retelling it. So I was 16, 17. And I want to put context into this as of why my brain had said this. So, you know, when you're in love with somebody, it's the first person you think of in the morning, and you have to text them, especially like, you know, when you're a teenager and it's like puppy love. That's what I was doing. So as soon as I woke up, I wanted to text my boyfriend at the time. We're not together anymore. So I want to say why that was on my brain, why that immediately was triggered into my brain for what I'm going to say next. So I had woken up and I was facing my TV, which was on a stand about 1.5 feet from my bed. I had about 1.5 feet of walking room. So I want you to imagine kneeling. You barely have enough room, a normal adult. Okay. So I wake up and I'm facing my TV, and all I see in front of me is a mass under my comforter that I'm now realizing is not on top of me, or is ever so slightly, like barely, like half on me kind of a thing. This is what I saw, without my hands, of course, but this is legitimately what I saw. My bed's this is what I'm seeing, and I'm laying in the bed where, I would be physically. So, because you wake up and you're, confused in a dream state, and my first thought was my boyfriend at the time, I'm thinking, this is some funny joke, right? Someone has to be underneath this playing a joke, and my boyfriend's funny, so he's doing this, right? So, what do? I poke it. Boop. And I want you to imagine a Bop It doll. The things that the clown used to punch. Imagine a Bop It doll. And it's just stationary, and then you hit it. I was doing this. And it moves forward. I do it again. And move forward. And I'm laughing because I'm thinking this is my boyfriend under the blanket, right? So I do this a few times, and it feels like a human skull, like I'm pushing someone's head. Something's there that's very solid. It feels the exact same, like legitimately. So I'm doing that a few times, and about the third or fourth time, it starts to click. My dad ain't doing this. This ain't my mom. She's disabled. She can't even get on the floor like that. This ain't my sister. What the hell is going on? So I start, how do I say it? I'm starting to panic, but I'm still kind of like half-ass poking it because it's like, this isn't making sense. And then the second it makes sense, or doesn't make sense, like this is not who I think it is underneath the blanket, I start to panic, obviously. So I sit up in bed and I start backing up. And the rest of my bed's against the wall. It's like in the corner, almost. And, no, it wasn't in the corner. There was another part on the other side of the bed. There was like a little gap, like as much as a nightstand. So I'm backing up as much as possible. My door's cracked ever so slightly because I had a cat at the time. So this is what I'm saying. It's stationary, and it went, right? So it was stationary at the same height. I start panicking, and it's slowly standing up. But again, mind you, this is a comforter, so like 6 foot, so I can't see anything underneath. So as I'm backing up, my sister, whose room is right across from mine, she looks in and sees me panicking, like utterly horror is across my face. I make eye contact with her as I'm sliding backwards. I look back, and this thing is still rising. I can't even speak. From what my sister said, my face went pale. Like she had literally thought someone was in my room and I couldn't say it. I was so scared. She busts open the room and she's looking, and I look back and the blanket is falling to the floor. She was like, "What's wrong?" "There's something under that blanket." "What?" There was something under there." She lifts it and there's nothing. She was like, "You were dreaming." "No, I wasn't." To this day, I can tell you it felt like a skull. If you put a blanket over top of somebody, on their knees and just pushed them with your fingertips and them naturally went backwards, that is exactly how it felt. It was utterly terrifying.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I was about 8 years old when I woke up in the dead of the night to a ghost standing next to me in bed. She was a little girl and she had a mess of blonde curly hair and a white pinafore dress. And she said, "You need to go check on Mom. She's not okay." And it scared me. And I jumped out of bed and literally ran right through her to meet my brother, who was 11 years older. So he was about 19, 20 years old, at the end of the stairs. And he's like, "What are you doing up?" And I told him, and he said, "That's really weird because I just had a dream of that same little girl telling me that I needed to check on Mom and that she would be okay." And we both ran into my mom's bedroom. She was doubled over in her bathroom having a miscarriage. We got her to the hospital. She was bleeding quite heavily. And they said that if we hadn't gotten her to the hospital, that she likely would have died. But it gets a little bit even weirder after that. It was several years after that that I ended up having a dream with this same little girl in it. My brother, who was now living very far away, had a dream with this same little girl in it. And it was, again, a forewarning with regards to our mom. And so my brother called me and said, "Did you have the dream?" And I said, "I did." And he said, "You need to check on Mom right now." And so I did. And she had attempted to take her life. And I got her to the hospital in time. We sort of believe that that little girl was the child that she miscarried, but had to take on the job of being my mom's guardian angel. I haven't seen her since. So that's my ghost story, or my angel story, and it's completely true.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So back in 2016, I believe, I was working for a paranormal events company and we were putting on an event for some members of the public at a haunted location called Secunda Manor in Caldicot. At the very beginning of the night, we would start our investigations the same way. We would get the team and all the guests to stand around in a circle, hold hands to, I guess, raise the energy. We would call out, ask the spirits of the venue to, use our energy to come through and communicate. We decided to do the energy circle in the attic of the building. It was pitch black. I could barely see anything I could hold my hand here and not see anything. We were stood in a circle and a guest on the other side of the circle said, "Oh, do you smell that? It smells like shit." Obviously, everyone started laughing and she went, no, like it actually smells like shit, because people thought that somebody had passed wind. And a moment later, the person to her left said, "No, I can smell it now. And it's definitely not wind. It's a very distinct smell." And then the person to the left of that person said, "I can smell it now too." And the very first person at the beginning was like, "I can't smell it anymore. It's gone." And one by one, this smell worked its way around everyone in the circle. And when it came to me, I was like, yeah, okay, I understand why nobody could, think that this is someone passing wind. It was a very distinct smell that's like someone has been sat in their own feces for a very long time. And the smell went around the whole circle until it just disappeared. Now, thinking about this situation, it felt as if so the building's rumoured to have a nasty male spirit. So everyone was putting two and two together and going, what if this was the nasty male spirit making its way around the circle, kind of summing you up, how somebody would be right in your face, kind of like antagonising you. So throughout the night, you know, if ever we would smell something, we would associate it with this negative male energy. A little while later, one of the guests in the group, a young lady named Sarah, was complaining to us that she was feeling really emotional and angry, and she couldn't place the feelings. Like, she didn't know why she was feeling that way. While we were having a break, me and the team were out in the kitchen, and another male guest popped his head around the door and said, "Just want to let you guys know, I'm a psychic medium, and I can sense that this nasty male spirit is attaching itself to this guest, Sarah. So at the end of the night, if you want me to do a cleansing, I will." So we were like, cheers, yeah, cool. Carried on with the rest of the night, you know, the usual knocks, bangs, gadgets going off and stuff. Nothing, you know, crazy, just, you know, average stuff. Then we decided to do an Ouija board. 99% of the guests were like, hell no, not doing that, go away. But Sarah seemed keen. She was like, yeah, I'll do it, I'll give it a go. So we set it up, and there was only one other guest that wanted to participate. So Sarah and this guest sat opposite each other on the table. Another team member was stood up in the middle, holding a torch and kind of partially covering it, just to give enough light so that everyone else in the room can see what was going on. I was stood about 2 meters away from Sarah. I could see her, you know, again, it was dark, so I have to take that into consideration. But I could see her face because the torch was in that area. And 2 of my teammates were stood next to me. We started doing the Ouija board, calling out, asking the spirit to use the, you know, the board, the energy, the planchette, you know, spell something out for us, you know, what's your name, etc. Then one of the guests that was to the left of me called out, "Oh, can you smell that? The smell's back again. Oi, shitty man, is that you?" And then everyone in the room started laughing, thought it was really funny. And while I was giggling, I looked back over at Sarah, who was now not Sarah anymore. She had black eyes. Her face had aged about 60 years. She was a man. Like, her face had turned into a man's face, and it was pure hatred staring into my eyes. Like, it was terrifying, and her face was like, literally, you know, it was as if somebody was going to say, "I'm going to fucking kill you." That was the look that I got from Sarah at that point. I would have discounted it as, you know, I'm imagining things, hallucination, whatever. Because I am a rational person. But then the 2 people next to me, my teammates, we all grabbed each other's arms and they went, "Do you see her face?" And I was like, you see, you know, like, couldn't get my words out. I was, you know, freaking out. And the 2 people next to me saw the exact same thing. They said it was not her anymore. She was now an 80-year-old man. And just like that, she was back to normal. And her eyes went back down to the table and carried on with the Ouija board. She does not remember that happening. We spoke to her afterwards and was like, "Hey, that moment on the board where you looked like you wanted to kill us, what happened?" And she does not remember it happening. And I genuinely questioned whether I wanted to continue in the paranormal after that. I went home, was driving home on my own, and I was certain that I was going to look up into the mirror and somebody was going to be sat in the back seat like that. I was freaked out. Luckily, nothing, you know, nothing like that has happened since in my paranormal journey. Kind of wish it would, but it hasn't. So that would definitely be one of the most terrifying things that's ever happened to me. And you know what? I am, like I said, I'm very rational. The longer I'm in the paranormal, the more I'm questioning things because I realize that psychology, atmosphere, environment, everything has a big influence on the paranormal experience. So I question my memory. I question whether or not I'm remembering things the right way. But I know at that very moment, her face wasn't her face.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
I literally just went and turned on the light so I could tell you guys this story because I feel like anytime I start telling some creepy paranormal shit, stuff starts going down around me, and I don't have time for that tonight. So this story isn't about me, but it's about one of my favorite teachers in high school, and it's one of the reasons why I don't think I'm going to have kids. So this teacher did not believe in anything paranormal, supernatural, or anything like that at all. So that's why I even believe this story more than I would believe other people. But she said that when she first had her firstborn daughter, weird things just started happening around the house. From the time she brought the baby home, her dog that used to be so lethargic and never moved or really barked or did anything would just randomly start standing up rigidly, staring in the corner at 3 a.m, growling. Stuff that anybody else would maybe have, the house saged or blessed or looked at by a priest. My teacher was like, no, it's fine, just newborn jitters. So there was one time that she took the baby to go see her mother-in-law, and it was just her and her brother-in-law sitting at the kitchen table while the baby was asleep upstairs, and her husband and everyone else was like out getting groceries or something. They were having a barbecue. So the two of them are just chatting away, having a regular old catch-up session. When, static starts hitting the baby monitor, they start, looking at each other. They start, hearing what sounds like voices, weird things coming through the monitor. They're like, well, what is this interference? Whatever. Didn't really think too much of it until all of a sudden the static stops, and then you could very clearly hear the opening of the door upstairs. Mind you, no one else is home. They're the only two there. They're on the first floor of the house, and the only one upstairs is the baby asleep. So my teacher leaps up from the table, runs upstairs. The man, of course, stays there, does not go accompany her. What if it was an intruder? Pick the bear. But so he stays and he's listening to the monitor, and he hears my teacher running up the stairs. He can hear the footsteps. But what was strange was once she reached the door where the baby was, the door was closed because she had to open it, and he also heard her open it on the monitor. Weirder still is that in the closed bedroom was the sleeping baby, and next to the baby was a little toy music box playing all by itself. It was one of the kinds that you have to wind up in order for it to play. And considering the baby was only a few months old, I don't think that she did it on her own. My teacher swears that, I don't know, it was just a fluke. Maybe it was an old music box. Things happen. Except the box was never put in the baby's crib in the first place. It was from somewhere else in the house. So when this baby grows up and she's 4 or 5 years old, or around whatever age that babies start sleeping on their own in big girl beds, maybe 3, I don't know. I don't know how old tiny humans are when they accomplish things. Baby turned into slightly larger baby is the point here. And once the baby was slightly larger and sleeping on her own, she kept waking up in the middle of the night, kept waking up, going into her parents' room and saying, mommy, I can't sleep. And my teacher would consistently pick her up, walk her back to her room and say, you're a big girl now. You have to sleep in your own bed. This is what big girls do. One night, I think it was probably the 3rd attempt that she had tried to put her daughter down to sleep. And when she finally said, enough is enough. You have to sleep in your bed. Do not get up again. It's time for us to go to sleep. And she said, but I can't sleep. He won't stop talking. What? Who? So naturally she does ask her, who won't stop talking? And she just says, the man at the end of my bed. Your new family at the fire station would love to hear about that. And what did my teacher do? She just went, she said, there is no man at the end of the bed, go to sleep, and shut the girl's door and went back to bed. That'll be great in therapy later. Or in the latest letter to the Vatican requesting an exorcist. If other spooky things happened with the child as she got older, my teacher did not share. But honestly, I think that's creepy enough.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
So I've been waiting about 20 years to get this off my chest. I was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas, in the Army back in the early 2000s, 2002 to 05. We deployed in 03. My unit got back in 2004-ish. and our company was assigned to a bunch of details. Like other vets will tell you what's up with that. But there was like funeral detail, gate guard, like all this other stuff. And since I only had a couple months left on my contract, my platoon sergeant sent me over to the gym, long gym. It was a fairly modern building, not old. Some of the buildings on Fort Riley are pretty antiquated. It's an old post, right? And so yeah, no big deal. So I go over there, and one of the things that I noticed right away is when I was up on the second floor by myself, I always felt like I was being watched. It was this really weird, eerie feeling. Um, the gym is 2 floors. It has a big glass front, from what I remember. You go up the stairs immediately, you're on the second floor. It's got a bunch of gym equipment, like not free weights, but like the machines. And to your left was a balcony that looked out over a basketball court on the first floor. So just for layout. And you go right in, there's a hallway, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, yeah, I was got this creepy feeling about being up there by myself. So months go by, like it's now late fall. And if you know anything about Kansas or the Midwest at all, is that in places like that, the wind never stops blowing. And in this particular night, it was cold and it was rainy. And earlier in the day, we were told that the brigade was having a mandatory fun day. That sounds as lame as it's as lame as it sounds. Where you're voluntold to hang out with them and have big fun. So the whole brigade was supposed to like play soccer and volleyball outside. Well, because the weather was so shitty that they would be bringing it in the gym. So we had to clean. And if there's one thing in the military, we'll teach you is how to clean something. Anyway, so that night, it's just blustery and cold and gross, and nobody's coming into the gym because nobody's leaving the barracks. Nobody's coming here. Everybody's warm. Everybody is words of warm. And so we cleaned our butts off. Like we scrubbed the place down from stem to stern, or so I thought. But anyway, me and this guy named Doherty. He's like, I'm 6'3". This guy's like 6'4", and corn-fed, big boy, right? So we go up to the second floor to walk through, and he gets out ahead of me. And so just being kind of silly, but also kind of testing a theory, I shut the lights off on him as he got like halfway through the second floor. I've never seen a dude that big move that fast and that gracefully, by the way, back to me toward the light. And he was like, dude, don't turn this light off. I said, why not, James? And he was like, because I always feel like I'm being watched up here. And I was like, okay. So the night goes on, and it's about 20 minutes to close. It's almost 20 minutes to 9 or 8, something like that. And it's nasty, dark. Nobody's coming in. So I go ahead and send my crew home. We all have to be there at 7 a.m. for this mandatory fun day. So I sent them off and locked the door behind them. Well, I'm walking through the gym one last time, making sure everything's the way it's supposed to be. And I'll kiss your bare ass if we didn't miss the biggest room in the house, the basketball court. There's dust all over this floor. I'm like, oh, son of a bitch. We had managed to pull the bleachers out, but we missed the biggest floor. Anyway, no big deal. I have nowhere to go. It's a Thursday night. I remember it's a Thursday night. Ain't shit going on. So I grab my broom and I'm sweeping. And I'm, as Joss Whedon referred to in Buffy, is having happy non-thoughts. You know what I mean. You're not thinking of anything. Nothing positive, nothing negative. You are not having thoughts. And I'm just sweeping along. Well, at one point, it felt like somebody was standing directly behind me. Like directly. Like right at my back. And I thought that James had somehow gotten back in. And that fucker was messing with me. And with broom in my hand, I spun around and nobody was there. Okay, not fun, but whatever. And I'm off doing my thing again. And like all of a sudden, I had these really, really bad thoughts, like really intrusive, really bad thoughts. Like if something were to happen to you, nobody would care. If you were to disappear, nobody ever come looking for you. Nobody loves you, blah, blah, blah. Like these awful string of really, really bad thoughts. And being a preacher's kid, now I'm nervous. It's not cool, like what I'm feeling. Like that's not me, right? And so when I get nervous, I begin to sing Amazing Grace to myself, because I'm by myself and it's now a little spooky. And the amount of malevolence and the amount of anger and just rage, unlike anything I'd ever experienced before in my life, was suddenly directed at me. I was singing the wrong song. It would be like uh Biden showing up to a Trump rally. Bad. It was bad. It was real bad. And I closed my eyes because it hit me like a wave, and I closed my eyes for just a second. And in my third eye, in my mind's eye, the bleachers were full of people. And the balcony was full of people. And that glass wall up on that second floor looking over was full of people. And they were not happy with me at all. And I began to quote the 23rd Psalm. Though I walked in the valley of the shadow of death, I should fear no evil, for thou art with me. And my mind switched over to when Jesus asked the madman Gadara, who are you? And the demons answered back, Legion, for we are many. And I said, okay, you got the gym for the night. And I forcibly walked to the door back into the hallway. Because I knew if I would have started running, something was going to get me at that door. It wanted me afraid. I think it wanted me to hurt myself. And I was alone and vulnerable. I put my stuff away. I grabbed my car keys and I drove back to the barracks. I got in my barracks room. I got under the covers and I called my dad. Nothing like that has ever happened to me since then. Nothing like that ever happened before. But I really, honest to God, believe something. I honest to God believe I met a demon or demons. I think those words are the same. I think they're the same thing. That's the feeling they gave me anyway. But yeah, that's my ghost story. And I don't want to have another one. So thanks.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Boy, have I been waiting for a trend like this, because everything that I'm about to tell you are true events that transpired to me and my family from October 2011 until March 2014. So this is the house in question, and I was able to find it online. We rented it through a rental company. After about a week of us moving in, cleaning up, we get a call from this lady who's actually the original owner of the house, and she asked us, hey, can I please stop by to see it one last time? So of course we didn't think anything of it. We're like, of course, stop by, come see it. So it turns out this lady was very sickly. I don't remember what illness she had, but she was leaving for treatment and the prognosis wasn't looking good. And she was telling us different memories she had with her family in that house. And once we get into my room, it was green and it had this cute little picket fence floral. This is the only picture I have. It's not that good. But it had little bunnies and stuff. And she said, please, if you are going to change anything in this house, do not touch this room. I hand painted this mural with my daughter who passed away. Which at the time we didn't think anything of it. I had no plans of changing it, plus it's a rental. We didn't want to change anything about it. Now, once this lady left is when things started to happen. Now, everything that I'm about to tell you As it happened, it continued to happen until we left this house. So at this point, we're about 2 weeks into living here, and I'm coming back home from school. I run up the stairs to the right. There's this office space, and the door was slightly open and the light was on. So I just turned off the light and closed the door, and I go to my mom's room. We talk about our day, and then we're gonna walk down the hallway, and we just stop. We stare at each other because I had told her about the light. The door again was open, and the light was on. So at this point, we kind of just walk over, we step into the room. There's nothing in there. We said, oh, how weird. Turn off the light, close the door. Now from here on out, there's little sprinklings of this light is on, this door is randomly open, after you had closed it or turned off that light. Nothing crazy. After that, about a month or two in, I had a little miniature pinscher. Her name was Susie. She would start barking all the way at the bottom level towards the garage. Now, the way the house was laid out is that there was a 2-car garage. You would go in and there was a second living room, go up some steps, kitchen, living room, dining room, and then you would go up the stairs and it was the 4 bedrooms and the bathrooms upstairs. But all of a sudden, Susie would start aggressively going downstairs and barking at the garage door. We didn't pay any mind to this because we thought, oh, maybe there's a lizard or some sort of animal or whatever in the garage. Until one day, my dad started seeing this creepy crawl space in the garage. The door would be open. Now, this happened about twice. Mind you, this is weeks, maybe months apart. So we don't really think anything of it. Maybe it's a raccoon that crawled out of it. I don't know. Until one day, Susie had been barking at this door once or twice a week. And one day she goes downstairs. Mind you, all the lights are off. She's barking so aggressively at the garage door, just going at it. And all of a sudden we hear a yelp, just ah! And she comes bolting up the stairs, goes all the way up the second set of stairs and goes into my parents' room under the covers in her bed. At this point, we all look at each other and we're like, what the hell? We check her, she's perfectly fine. And then from here on forth, she still barks, but she would bark from the steps in the kitchen going down into that second living room. She would bark from there. She never went back to the garage door again. Then the next thing that started happening is we would hear just stomping up and down the stairs. And we would be like, what the hell is going on? And a lot of the times it was happening when everyone was in the house. So we were just excusing it as, oh, it's my dad, oh, it's my mom, or my mom would think it's me, and vice versa. Until one day, it happened to all of us individually when we were by ourselves. So I would hear stomping going up and down the stairs, but I would be home alone. That continued on, and we said, oh, okay, well, I guess there's spirits in the house. Whatever. There's nothing you can do about it. We didn't feel any negative energy or anything, so we, again, paid it no mind. And then, I guess we must have had a little trickster spirit. All of a sudden, things would start missing and then reappearing. So let's say all of a sudden you open the drawer in the kitchen and all of the spoons are gone. And they would be missing for 2 or 3 days, and then you would open it back up and they would just magically reappear. So this happened the whole time we were there. We didn't pay any mind to it. It's innocent, whatever. After the first year is when things started getting progressively more intense, more aggressive. I would be home alone after school in my bed doing homework, either with the door closed or the door open, but I started hearing scratching on my door, just a scratching sound. And, I thought maybe it's Susie trying to get into the room. Until one day, those scratching noises were happening while I was home alone, and the door was closed, and Susie was sitting next to me. I would just wait at that point until my parents got home from work and then get out of my room. Never any scratch marks or claw marks or anything. Soon after that, I started experiencing a lot of seeing shadows in the hallway or feeling like something was watching me while I was taking a shower. And then I talked to my mom about it, and she said she saw the shadows too. My dad eventually started seeing them, and it was always of a man in a suit. He had a top hat and he had a suitcase, and you would only ever see his shadow in the top hallway, or you would see his shadow while you were taking a shower, and you would open the curtain and there would be nothing there. And that was the absolute worst just feeling and knowing you were being watched. Then one day, again, I'm by myself, my parents still aren't home from work, and I'm upstairs in my room with Susie, and mind you, the garage is directly under, so whenever someone comes home, you can kind of feel a slight shake and hear the garage door open and close very clearly. So at this point, Susie hears the garage door open. She goes downstairs all excited to say hi to my parents or whoever it is coming home. I'm still doing homework, so I'm not focused too much on it. And I literally hear the garage door open. I hear my mom with ruffled bags, and she's like, Joelle, come down here. Help me with the groceries. I'm like, okay. I go downstairs. My mom isn't in the kitchen. I just find Susie staring with her head little cocked over at the garage door. And at this point I start shaking. I'm like, Mommy? No answer. I open the garage door. It's empty. The garage is closed. No one is home. At this point, I bolt it upstairs, lock myself in my room, and I do not come out of my room until my parents come home. After this occurs once or twice more, and then after that I completely ignore it until my mom physically comes into my room and says, hey, help me with the groceries, because that freaked me out and I'm not trying to mess with anything like that. Not for me. And then one day, all of us are home. I'm in my room, my mom's in her room, my dad's downstairs in the living room watching TV, and all of a sudden, all of the lights start flickering on and off. All of the hallway coat jackets, all of the closets open up and stuff just starts getting thrown out of it. Now this is the closet you could see directly in front of the living room that my dad saw just rip open, and just everything was closing out. What the fuck? At this point, heavy, intense, dark energy was flowing through, and a few days later we get a call from the rental agency letting us know that the lady who owned the house passed away that night. I'm literally getting goosebumps. And then after this, right here in that door, my mom had a little half curtain. After that day, there was this big dark shadow of a man just standing in front of the door. At first, I thought maybe it was just my reflection or something, but all of us saw it. And one day, out of curiosity, we were like, what is that? Maybe it's a trick of the mind. So all three of us opened the door. No shadow, close it, full figure, shadow figure of a tall, big man just standing in front of the door. Now this shadow, it did nothing to us. It didn't feel any negative presence of it, but it was there until the day we left that house. Like I said, after we found out the homeowner had passed away, a lot of the activities started ramping up. It was almost every single day, and at this point it started getting more aggressive, but it was definitely more towards me. I was the one experiencing the most. My parents saw a few things, but I was experiencing a lot of the hostility. And I don't have enough time, so I have to do a part 2.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Alright, so we're back at it for part 2 of my haunting ghost stories. All of the events transpired from October 2011 until March 2014. Like I said in the previous video, after the homeowner passed away, a lot of the energy turned very heavy, very hostile, and I felt like a lot of it was directed towards me. So after that happened, I started having very vivid nightmares. They felt very real, very harmful, and every single time I had them, these were weekly, multiple times a week. I would wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, and I started experiencing sounds and feeling things in my room after that night. And what I mean by that is waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning, the room is pitch black, and I would hear just, mind you, I had carpet in my room, and I would literally hear dragging feet stomps in my room, starting from my door that was closed all the way to where it would get to the head of my bed, and I could just feel a presence there, and I would just hide under the covers. I didn't want to look at it. I would pray and hope that whatever it was would go away. And after that, that occurred several times where I would hear that dragging just sound walking towards me. Eventually, it got into my bed. Whatever it was, I literally felt the weight of it lay next to me and into my bed. And again, I would just pray, and hope that it would be over. Sorry to get emotional or my voice gets shaky. It's just that was a moment in time that I was just so scared and I feared for what would happen to me at the time. And it happened a couple times where whatever that was would get into my bed and I would just pray and pray and pray until one time it rolled over onto me and I just felt an immense pressure on my chest, just squeezing and literally indenting me into the bed, and I could not breathe. So then that happened a few times and I would just scream, and my parents would run into my room, and the moment they did, whatever it was would just leave. Like, oh, the weight would just be lifted from my chest, and I noticed that whatever it was only ever happened in my room, and if I had any company over, nothing would ever happen. So I was either always at one of my friends' house sleeping over because I did not want to sleep in my room, or I would have them sleeping over at my house and then nothing would ever happen. And then I remember one time I had my girlfriend over, my parents were upstairs, and I was washing dishes while she was behind me just hanging out, and I had my hair in a claw clip. So I was just washing dishes, we were talking, and all of a sudden I feel hands behind me on my claw clip and it just pushes my head down. And I was like, girl, quit playing. And she just looked so scared. And she said, that wasn't me. And I looked at her, I said, what do you mean it wasn't you? She said, that wasn't me. Whatever pushed you just now was not me. And I could see the genuine fear in her eyes. And I turned off the dishes, we ran upstairs, and we went into our room. And we kind of laugh about it now, but it was legitimate. Whatever it was, I felt hands and it pushed my head down. Afterwards, we had an instance where my dad was helping out one of his soldiers who was going through a divorce. So he came to stay at our house until he got his stuff gathered and situated during that time. He was at our house for 2 days before he told my dad, I cannot stay at your house anymore. He said, I might sound crazy, but ever since I was little, I see spirits. And he said, this house has a lot of spirits. The majority are good, but there's a few that are very malicious, and the only reason nothing bad has happened to you guys is because those good spirits are fending them off, but they're getting weak. You guys need to leave. So at that point, he just confirmed all of the suspicions we had. And like I said, the energy was getting a lot darker, a lot heavier, a lot more hostile. After he left, I had this one very vivid dream that I remember to this day. I woke up in my dream down the street. So I was walking, kind of jogging back to my house. Everything was dark. Everything was deathly still. Not a single cricket, bird, nothing. It's midnight. The moon was out. I run into my house and there's candles lit everywhere, just like if it was a ceremony. And then I see what I can only describe as a stereotypical demon that you see, the hooves, the red skin, the horns. And he said, I've been waiting for you. And I just bolt upstairs. He chases me and he grabs me in my room and he grabs me by the neck and he stares at me. And he just says, I finally got you. And I wake up, I can't breathe. I have a panic attack. Again, it's 2 or 3 in the morning. I tell my parents about it. So at this point, my mom is dead set on getting the house cleansed, getting some holy water. But before that happens, they're out of the house. I'm in the house alone again. And I have my room door shut at this point. I don't want anything entering my room. I have my dog, and all of a sudden I hear that scratching again, except it's very persistent, it's very intense, and I just yell at it. I say, "Leave me alone! Leave me alone!" And the doorknob starts rattling and the door just bursts open. I get up, I shut the door, lock it. And then all of a sudden, the scratching stops, the door handle stops. You know, I've shut the door at this point, and we have one of these. This isn't the one from the house, but it was an old metal ceiling fan like this. And all I hear is this big metal crashing sound. It sounds like a car crash. And at this point, I'm trembling. I call my parents and I said, "Can you please come home?" At this point, my parents come home, and when I finally get out of my room, speaking with my parents on the phone, and I know they've come home, and it's not spirits mimicking them or anything like that, I come out of my room, and we look at that ceiling fan, and it is fully dented in. Whatever it was, bashed it in with one punch or throw, whatever it did. And at that point, you know, we had the holy water, we fully cleansed the house, and everything died down. I didn't have the vivid nightmares anymore. Nothing was bothering me in bed or doing anything like that anymore. The only thing that was still there was, I guess, the little trickster spirit moving stuff around or hiding stuff, the stomping up the steps, and the shadow figure up front. After we fully cleansed the house and had someone come in and properly cleanse it using holy water everywhere and making sure to basically cleanse every couple of days, we didn't have any issues for the last few months of being there, and then we left March 2014. My dad got orders. He went to Texas. I was already in college, so I got an apartment in a different area in that town, and by far that is the absolute worst experience I've ever had with anything paranormal.